All right, bang, bang. Today's Friday. It's February 19th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Of course, it's True Crime Friday, so I'm with True Crime Allie. Allie, how are you?
What's up? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. It's always True Crime Friday here on the Dog Walk. Before we get into it, Allie, though, I do want to talk about Roman. Obviously, I've been saying it all week. Most guys, you're trying to find different ways to last longer in bed. You got all your methods. You're doing a seance. You're burning I don't know, an old mattress or something to try to last longer. You're trying to do what you can to make it work to try to do a better job, but you don't got to do that shit anymore because Roman is here to help. They're an online men's health company and they're changing the game with the Roman swipes. The swipes are clinically proven as a way to last longer in bed. They're effective, easy to use, and fast acting, but they don't require a prescription. Roman can ship swipes to you in discreet, unmarked packaging, and each swipe packet is small enough to hide in your wallet for whenever you need it. They're super easy to use. Just take the swipe out of the packet, swipe it on, let it dry, and you're good to go. That's it. To get your hands on these to enhance your sex game now, go to getroman.com/walk, and you can get your first month of swipes for just $5 when you choose a monthly plan. That's getroman.com/walk. Like I said, there's no need for you to try to do all these other methods. It's just superstition. It's just luck, whatever. Use something that's actually clinically proven to help you, and that's Roman swipes. Go do it. Use the promo code WALK. GetRoman.com/walk. All right, Allie, we got a little bit of a different kind of change of pace here today, I'd say.
Yeah, we're switching it up with not so much murder. Not that it's better than murder, but we do have a happy ending for you guys today. And we're going to cover the Turpin family, which is actually a very recent story within the past couple of years. So we've brought it back to the 40s and all that stuff, but we're going to bring it up to a current-ish case that was quote unquote solved or resolved in 2019. So
listen, even though it's a happy ending, that doesn't mean that it's not fucked up because as this pod and as the research went on, my jaw just kept getting lower and lower to the floor, because it's just so fucked up. But
yeah, it's a different kind of messed up today than we've covered in the recent weeks.
Yep.
Again, not that makes it any better, but it's more psychological, I would say. Diving in though, David and Louise Turpin, they were the parents of, first of all, 13 kids. So starting right off the bat, you have a team of children. They clearly did not waste any time. They raised these kids, though. This is where we get into the issue of they raised these kids in a horrific manner, torturing them physically, mentally, abusing them. Originally, the family lived in Fort Worth, Texas. However, they moved out to Paris, California, which, again, I'm so sorry for the West Coast listeners because we just continue to pick on the West Coast like there is no tomorrow. I literally looked for a case that I was like, oh, we're in Texas this time. Great. Nope, they moved out to California. So I'm really sorry. West Coast, I love you, but you guys got some stuff going on.
Yeah.
So the Turpin family moved out to Paris, California. And this is the house that they moved to is the house that would be deemed the House of Horrors. And this is the house that the kids were rescued from. The kids, the 13 were aged from age 2 to 29. So we've got a really broad range of kids here. 7 of the 13 children were adults, even though in all the newscasts and all the reporting of this, you will always see them referred to as the 13 Turpin children. And this is because when they were rescued, the law enforcement that rescued them had no idea that any of them were adults because of how malnourished they were. So the eldest of the children, like I said, was 29 years old, but she only weighed a total of 82 pounds when she was rescued. And law enforcement thought that she was 13. That is unbelievable. And it's so sad that these poor kids were so malnourished and so underdeveloped that the cops literally had no idea that half of them were adults.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine someone that's 29 that weighs 82 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just like an image, like you can't even.
No, you can't even like put it.
Yeah, it can't compute. Like you just can't compute that image at all.
So they moved out to this, which actually surprises me. They moved to this like very suburban neighborhood. They had neighbors that were in close proximity. Instead of moving out to like nowhere where they would never have been caught, they would be like hard for the kids to have contact with anybody. Obviously with all the stuff that the parents were doing to their kids, it just surprises me that they were like so much in suburbia. But the neighbors recounted that they rarely ever saw the children, which to me is so odd because your neighbors have 13 kids and you never see them. That to me is such a red flag. And this is not putting it on the neighbors at all, because like, even if the neighbors were to have been like, oh, that's weird, or like, why haven't I seen these kids in literally years? But again, like even if the neighbors were to go report that, be like, hey, I haven't seen my neighbor's kids in a couple of years. Like, okay, there's nothing that they could have done. You know what I mean?
And they did have some tactics that they used, the parents, to kind of cover this up as well.
Mm-hmm.
They put it under like a homeschooling umbrella. So
Mm-hmm.
it was like, oh, well, if they're not going to school because they're going to school there, that's a natural thing. You go see them on their way to and from school. You didn't get that. And there's that excuse, right? And then they had like weird sleeping hours too, right?
Yeah, they made the kids nocturnal. So they were up all night and would sleep all day.
Which, I mean, sure, another good way for when everybody's sleeping, they're awake, and then, vice versa. So it's like someone on the graveyard shift. If you have a neighbor who's on the graveyard shift, you probably don't see him that much, right?
Right. And on that note too, the neighbors, like some of them would recount, like if for whatever reason they were up in the middle of the night, get a glass of water, go to the bathroom, whatever, they did recount seeing like commotion going on at the Turpin house. Like the lights were on, and they just recounted that they would see like a line of all the kids just like marching back and forth for hours. And this made them think the neighbors thought that they were like some kind of cult. And I think just like minded their own business to be like, we want no part in that. And like, we don't want to be, like something bad to happen to our house or our family. So we're just going to like stay out of it. But how creepy to like wake up in the middle of the night and like see that going on at your neighbor's house.
Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong. If you're a neighbor and you see that going on, and 13 kids, just by the sheer amount, the fact that you don't see them at all is insane. Is very crazy and very abnormal. But, some people just fucking stick to themselves and they mind their own business and they don't get involved. That's what people just don't want to be involved in other people's shit. And that was probably what was going on. And yeah, there probably was an element to be like, whoa, I don't want to fuck with that. These two people, the number one, the dad, he's got a straight bowl cut like the kid, like the guy who's afraid of the sun from Benchwarmers.
Yes, he's got the coconut on his head.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
When you see this guy and his haircut, you're gonna be stunned. So he's got that. The wife, the mom, she's a little creepy too. 13 kids doing marches. I mean, I'd probably shut the blinds too, but
yeah.
I mean,
any other way, it's like, I don't want any part of this. I don't want to even get, especially because like, if you're the neighbor that like calls on them and then there's nothing going on, then you're that neighbor. You know?
And I mean,
it's for those neighbors. I mean, they don't. Yeah.
But you know what though? And we're going to go through it. Like at the end of the day, like you should do something, because it's a fucking shame what these kids had to endure for their fucking lives. Some for 29 years. So like, I'm not saying like, oh, I would have done that. Sure. And I'm not saying I would have done something either, but at the same time, I don't know. It's good to be cognizant of what's going around you, because it's fucked up. And the more we go down, like I said, we just haven't even, got to anything yet, I feel, and it's already super fucked up. So let's keep it moving. And I guess we'll build from there, Allie.
Yeah. So the two parents, David and Louise, were super opposite. I'm actually like, I have no idea how they ended up together, because Louise grew up.
Louise or Louis?
Louise or Louis. Okay, it has an E on the end of it. I'm bad with names. How do you read it?
Well, I don't think you got an excuse here. I think it's Louise.
Louise. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll go with Louise. I will never, it'll be like the name Smith. I'll be like, how do you pronounce this?
No,
And I'll still
it's all
pronounce
right.
it. So
It's all
that's fine.
right.
So Louise, on the other hand, she grew up in like an extremely abusive household, like very toxic. She had a couple of sisters, and the mom, they were very, very poor, didn't have a lot of money. The mom would literally pimp them out to a pedophile on the regular to like make money and not give these girls any sort of choice. So right off the bat, she's growing up in a super toxic household. This is obviously very much a nurture situation. On top of that, her parents fought constantly. She was bullied at school. So she had this like horrible home life. She was being bullied at school. It's just like very much a recipe for disaster. And as an adult, she started taking part in witchcraft, which in and of itself is not a crime. But she was also a gambling addict, a severe alcoholic. So there was a lot going on.
Multitude of problems for sure.
Yeah. She also had this like, I don't know, obviously this has nothing to do with it, but she had this really weird obsession with snakes where she would like play with them and she would eat them. Just like, hey, yeah, I think I'm gonna have the snake tonight.
Yeah, well,
which, okay, if you're an exotic eater, more power to you. I commend you for that because I am not, but I don't know anyone that just like eats snake on the regular.
No, and I mean, it's not clarified if it was, cooked and whatnot, or because anything's on the table with her because she's obviously insane and out of her mind, but who knows? Yeah.
So complete opposite of that. David, he grew up in a very normal household, had your run-of-the-mill childhood, went to school, and after school, he landed himself a very successful job. He was in computer engineering, so clearly he was very smart. And not only like computer engineering, but he was doing computer engineering for government defense companies. So he also had this level of responsibility and security, obviously with his job working for the government. So he was successful. He was doing good. He's smart. He's had a good childhood. Meets Louise. Obviously, things start to kind of take a tumble in his conduct and behavior. And then he ultimately ended up filing for bankruptcy, actually for like $250,000. I don't know if this had anything to do with like him going from being this computer engineer in the successful job to being the quote unquote principal of the homeschool. Anyways, they racked up debt. His life took a turn when he married Louise and started this family. They just started popping babies out left and right. And these poor kids, this is where it comes in, where once they had the kids, the parents were constantly torturing, abusing, malnourishing these poor kids. They were, again, aged from 2 to 29. They were constantly getting beaten, strangled. They would starve the kids and this happened all their lives for years. They would use different kind of torture tactics. So they would use sound like as a psychological torture. For example, they would take when the smoke detector needs its battery changed, have that beep.
Yeah. I mean, everyone knows that sound. That sound is burned in everyone's head.
Yeah. And it doesn't stop. They would make sure not to change the batteries so that sound didn't stop. Would just all day, all night for years on end would just hear that beep. Just as like an added level of pain and torturing to these poor kids. And so another example is the parents, one of the 9-year-old daughters, she tried to sneak food from the kitchen and she was caught by Louise, and Louise took her cat and made the 9-year-old daughter watch as she fed it to feral dogs in the backyard. She's like, hey, watch this cat, get torn to pieces. Just like sick in the head kind of things.
This is the stuff that it keeps going. Like listen, it's obviously horrible. The degree of neglect, the degree of torture, and, withholding food and, doing all that. But then like the method, I don't know if it matters. Torture is torture, but the methods of torture, I don't know, it really struck me because it got to me, I would say for sure.
There's just so like, there's another level between like physical torture and then you take it into psychological torture. Like that's another level of you are so sick in the head to not only be okay with physically hurting people, but also just like thinking of these sick ways to bring pain onto somebody and your children of all people. They also, so the kids, all 13 of them, they were forbidden to communicate with each other. So even though they're being held in this captivity with all their siblings, they are not allowed to communicate with each other. They were actually allowed to have journals though, which for some reason that surprises me. Sorry, there's a siren going by if you can't hear that.
Yeah, if you're in your car, don't worry. It's not behind you, probably.
Yeah, no need to pull over.
People going past Allie's building.
It's just Chicago for you.
Yeah.
Anyways, they would take these journals and they would write about their days and their lives and like what the parents were doing to them. And this was eventually used as evidence against the parents, obviously. But I don't know, to me, it's like, why would you're not gonna let your kids communicate, but you're gonna let them write down everything you're doing to them?
So strange. And like you said, it's different from being like, hey, no, you're not going anywhere. You're going to your room. You're not eating dinner tonight, to feeding their fucking cat to feral dogs. Yeah. And then to me, one of the, like the beeping of the fire alarms, like you said, but the pie shit is insane too.
Yeah. So she would so these kids were only allowed to eat once a day. And it's not like they could choose their meal. They were fed once a day. Obviously, this made them very, very malnourished, and they were constantly starving. But Louise would bake. She would bake pies and like yummy desserts, and then be like, "You can look, you can smell, but you are not getting any of this stuff until it like grows mold, and then I will feed it to you." That is, honestly, reading all of this stuff too. The fact that none of these kids got sick enough to where they had to be hospitalized is beyond me, because that is so dangerous. And they were in horrible conditions that I'm like, wow, what happens when one of these kids got sick?
Yep.
Had some issue that they needed help with. The kids didn't even know what medicine were. When they were rescued, they had no idea what medicine was.
They didn't know what medicine was. They didn't know what a police officer was. So not only are they malnourished, not only had they lived a horrible life physically, they also cognitively, they're just not there. They don't know normal things that people should know at their ages. Like they have no idea. A 29-year-old doesn't know what a police officer was. What? No.
Right. They were completely isolated from society. They had no idea what any norms were. All they knew was being locked in a house and tortured by their parents, which is horrible.
And I got to be honest, Ellie, I don't even think we, like I said, we've got to, the pie thing was like, holy shit, that's so bad. They would just make them stare at this food that they couldn't have and then only give it to them if it was moldy. The smoke alarms, feeding the dog. Mm-hmm. I don't even think we said the worst one. What was the worst one in your eyes?
Oh, I know. Okay. So yes, they were obviously all this psychological torture, but they were on the regular, they were chained to their beds all day long. Mm-hmm. Like at all 4 points, they were not allowed to move. They were not allowed to stand up. They were not allowed to use the bathroom, nothing. Just chained to your bed. Is that what you're talking about? That's horrible as well. But it's one of those things where if someone's held in captivity, like I figured that kind of chaining and tying up and all that's kind of part of the drill. What got me was that they were only allowed to shower. Oh, yes.
Once, maybe twice per year.
Per year. That
365 days.
Unbelievable. Was
that your like number one thing? Because that was where I was like, that's unfathomable as well. Like I said, I couldn't imagine a 29-year-old at 82 pounds. That's another one. I can imagine someone who's only taken 1 or 2 showers in 365 days. I can't do it. I can't imagine it.
I just can't imagine like the amount of filth that had to have built up in like not taking a shower for that long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I go 2 days without washing my hair. I'm like, oh my God, I feel so gross. A year, literally an entire year.
And I don't understand it from the parents' perspective either. Like, sure, maybe they were so confined to the rooms, but like you're only like living in that filth as well. So it's so strange. And
Yeah. Yeah, because the house was disgusting. There was like feces everywhere because the kids weren't allowed to use the bathroom. Obviously, it had to have smelled in there. It was dirty. You had moldy food going on everywhere. Like, and the parents were just cool with it.
yeah, and I know people will be like, well, maybe it was like an alter. It was something where they didn't want to let them out of the chains. But one of the craziest things as well was that they took 2 vacations. And when I
Yeah.
saw that, I'm like, how do they do that? They went to Disney for one. So they went to Disney in Anaheim, and then they went to Vegas. And I saw that, I'm like, like I'm telling you, once people go on, they Google these people, if they don't know already, because obviously we said it's a pretty recent case. Once they go to Google these people and they see the parents and then they see the images of these 13 kids, and and the neighbors did say that the few glimpses that they had of the kids, the paleness of them is what kind of stuck out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised nobody, saw any red flags on these vacations, because people said that they didn't. They said they're like, oh no, like nothing.
Yeah. I think honestly, people are just more shocked about the fact that there was 13 of them than like actually taking a look and being like, hey, something might not be right here. And obviously, they're going to these huge like touristy places. They went to Disneyland, they went to Vegas. Like people watching is just people watching there, like you don't suspect the people in line for a roller coaster behind you torture their kids, as you're at Disneyland. It's like, that's so unsuspecting, but it's just crazy that they were literally like chained to their beds day in and day out in isolation for years at a time. They did not leave the house. And then they like go to Disneyland.
Yeah, it's wild. And the people, the parents too, Louise and David, were big Disney people. Like they had Disney license plates and shit. So, I mean, tough for the diehard Disney.
I know
people.
Everybody knows this, the one or two Disney people that that will always be obsessed with Disney. Tough. But hey, good to you as long as you don't torture your kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, tough blow for them though, because that did not go over well.
Yeah.
So all of these kids clearly had a lot of damage to their bodies, to their mental state, to their development. And like the malnourishment part is the part that just got me so badly, because when they were chained to their beds, again, not allowed to move, not allowed to stand up, go to the bathroom, anything like that, that creates muscle waste in your body. So essentially your body is literally starting to decay in front of you when you are not even dead yet. That to me is the most horrific thing of this whole thing. And they were fed like moldy food. If it was like a good day and they were lucky, their meal would be peanut butter, a bologna sandwich, a frozen burrito, and chips. That was like, they were eating good if they got that meal. And just
I assume that's not all at once either, right? Like was just like a variety of their meals. Like,
I don't think.
Yeah.
No, it's quite, to me, that's too big of a meal. So if they were only being fed once a day, there's no way they were getting all of that.
Yeah.
But that's just like, and one of the daughters recounted, she was like, I started to the point where it's like, I was just instantly gagging on peanut butter because I could not eat it anymore. And that was like the one thing I was allowed to eat, and I couldn't even keep that down. It's just like, it's horrible. So these kids were in this situation, being horribly brutalized by their parents, living in this terrible, literally house of horrors. And majority of them, this was their norm, as in they didn't know anything different. But some of the older ones knew that this was not normal. This was not okay, and that there was help out there. So the 17-year-old daughter, she had somehow gotten a hold of this like old cell phone, and she spent 2 years planning an escape so that she could save her and her siblings. She said, like I said, the kids were not allowed to communicate with each other, but at nighttime, they were all, obviously they were all kept in the same space, and the kids they would cry and cry, and they would ask her, like, please call somebody to help us. Please, you have to try. So again, it took her 2 years to come up with this escape route of knowing she was going to be able to get out, because I can only imagine the like fear and anxiety of what if this plan does not work out, or what if, I call and I get caught, or if I try and escape and I get caught, or help doesn't come, or, all those, like, that has to be so debilitating. Just the fear of that is unreal. I can't even imagine.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So eventually, though, in January of 2018, she worked up the courage she grabbed the cell phone. She had actually taken pictures of the house in the state that it was in, which smart on her part, because they could use that for evidence. But she ended up jumping out the window, running, and calling 911. The 911 call lasted 20 minutes long. That is, imagine being a dispatcher on the phone with someone who's telling you all these things for 20 minutes.
And she probably didn't have a lot of answers to a lot of it. I'm surprised. And
Right.
We don't really know this information because, I mean, they won't even show you all the pictures I've seen. All their faces are blurred out because they're keeping the identity pretty close. And I don't know if anything's come out within, the 2 years or whatever, but like I said, 20 minutes, I assume there was a lot she couldn't answer because she just didn't know. So I don't know what she knew. It's in ways I'm surprised that she knew to take pictures and like show for proof. Like that's all kind of interesting to me, but regardless, like you said, 20-minute 911 call, and 2 years has this escape plan. And then finally help came after that 911 call.
Yep. Help came. Law enforcement came, and they, obviously got into the house. They found these kids, changed their bed. There was also cages in the house where the kids would be held for like severe punishment. So they got all the kids out. Obviously, David and Louise were taken into custody immediately. And the kids were initially taken, so they were all obviously taken into custody for a safety perspective. And they were immediately given the health care that they need, the mental health, the education development, all that kind of stuff. And there was a lot of like funds that were donated to help them. But the scary thing to me was when Louise was taken in, initially, she did not understand that she had done anything wrong. She literally had stated, she just thought that they were going to like make her go to a parenting class and then this would all be over. Insane that she thought that. Like, oh yeah, they should just like slap on the wrist. Like, I'll be okay. Like, no, bitch. Like it's not going to be good for you. Like, no,
you
you're
can't
done.
do that.
You're done.
Yeah.
Like, and she wrote this like apology letter that was like, I'm sorry, I've been a bad mom. I'll do better. You are not going to ever have the chance to do better ever in your lifetime.
No.
Like it's clearly she was very sick in the head. The Turpin parents were indicted on multiple counts of torture, false imprisonment, child abuse, cruelty to a dependent adult, and willful child cruelty. Originally, though, they ended up pleading not guilty, and they were held on a $12 million bail. That's pretty hefty bail.
Yep. Rightfully so.
Eventually, they ended up pleading guilty to 14 felony counts, and that was in February of 2019. And they did this in order to avoid going to trial because they were afraid that if they went to trial, they've got 13 children that can testify against them. They knew they stood no chance. Mm-hmm. So they were eventually sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole until 25 years, which to me, I don't think they should ever be eligible for parole because they are clearly a danger to society. But they're going to be in there for a while, and hopefully their eligibility is denied when it becomes that time. The prosecutor did say that on the case that this was the worst child abuse case he had ever seen, and rightfully so. This is absolutely unreal. These poor kids, I will say, we do have somewhat of a happy ending here. The parents were sentenced to life in prison, hopefully with no possibility of parole, even after 25 years. And the kids they all ended up getting really good help. Some of the kids are in college now. They are getting they're learning their basic life skills. They're catching up on their education. They're getting the medical treatment they need, the mental health treatments they need. And a lot of them have come out and said, like, we are doing really well. We are trying to learn to be a part of society, and that is very new to us. They've also said they're like, we don't want our names to be tied to our story, because we just want to live a normal life. Which, to my surprise, the media actually did a really good job of respecting that. Because like you said, all the pictures, you can look up pictures of them and their faces will be blurred out. I did not see any names released in any of the reports that I read, mostly because a lot of them were minors, so they can't release that information anyways. But as far as the media goes, like, usually they're pretty ruthless. But for this one, they were actually pretty respectful to not release their information for the most part.
Yeah. And listen, sometime down the line, I assume one of these kids are going to do an interview or something, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure eventually.
But at least, like, for the first couple years or so, it seems like they've been on their way trying to get back and, physically and mentally get into a better place where they could, live normal lives that they deserve.
Yeah. So at least for now, and for the first couple of years, they had a chance to integrate themselves into society without having to, like, fight the media, which is awesome. And I think because more so the focus was on David and Louise, not the children, which as it should be, it was more focused on their punishment and their sentencing than the kids' lives, because they knew they were all getting back on track. But that is the story of the Turpin family, the horrible, horrible parents. And luckily the kids got out alive and are making their way.
Yeah, like you said, I don't know, because I can't imagine that if these kids are still living, in which they will be, there's 13 of them, and the parents can't get out. Well, any of these kids are, like, they can't have a possible another. You just can't do that to them, I don't think, right? But then the weirdest thing is, I also saw here that they said they still love their parents, and they, there's that whole thing too, So
yeah, it's like that. It's sad. It's really sad that they, were put through all of this, and they can still stand up and give their, victim statements saying, like, we still love our parents, even though we know what they did was wrong. And it's just it's that paternal bond between a parent and a child. Like, this is the person that was supposed to protect me and raise me. They did not do that. They did very much the opposite of that, but, like, they still had that pull towards them, because that's all they've ever known for their lives were these people. And it's just like, it's so sad. It's in a way, it's good that they don't, like, harbor a lot of hatred, but it's just sad that, like, they had to be put through that when that was not at all what they deserved.
Yeah. And we didn't see the video of the victim statement, and we don't know how exactly that I love you came about. Like, there's an I love you, like, hey, like this, everything's okay, like, I still love you. And there's like, hey, I love you, you're my parents, I accept what you did, but I want nothing to do with you. You know what I mean? So there's a different kind of I love you there for sure. But yeah, and then I saw this 11-year-old, one of the 11-year-old daughters had the arms the size of infants. That's another thing I can't imagine that either.
They were the 11-year-old was literally the size of an infant.
That's so bad. That's so bad. And Louise, like, just, I don't know, like, obviously terrible childhood herself. And she came from, like, I think her dad was a pastor, super religious family. And I don't know if this was like a religion in her eyes, or if this was some type of deal like that, but it's just super fucked up. I'm glad all the kids made it out, and I hope they're doing well. I think that's all you could say, right?
Yeah. I'm sure more, like, since this is a very recent case, I'm sure more will come out, in years to follow, and there'll be updates and stuff. But as for now, the kids are doing well. The family home was auctioned off online. And it was bought in December of 2018. So somebody owns that home now, which is really scary. But
of all homes, like, they had 2 other homes before that too that were in horrible shape as well. The guy who bought their Texas home said there was feces and, like, ropes and, like, chains. So, like, there was I guess there were signs, but hey, like we say all the time, you never know. Like at the time, it's when the shoe's on, whatever, however that fucking saying goes, you know what I mean? It's tough to say what you would or wouldn't do. So,
I know they slipped through the cracks, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
eventually they did not. Eventually they got busted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, all right, Allie. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like we said, this is the only one that has some of it happy ending. Still sucks that someone had to endure 29 years of that and just even a day of that. So I hope the kids are doing well. Like we said, thanks everybody for listening. That's True Crime Friday this week. We'll see you guys all on Monday.